Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is this Thursday evening dinner that we've been waiting for. I think we have a great day. There was a lot of discussion, very exciting. So it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker of the evening, Yanis Yorsos. I would like to say a couple words about him and his activities and his interests. Won't take too long because I am very excited and very anxious to hear what he has to say today. So Yanis is the Dean of the Viterbi School of Engineering, the University of Southern California. He's a chemical engineer. He's a professor of chemical and petroleum engineering. So he is Greek. Those of you who know Yanis. He got his bachelor degrees in the National Technical University of Athens. My husband is half Greek, and he told me that that's the absolute best university in Greece. So, and then here in the US, he received his Master in Science and PhD from Caltech, also in chemical engineering. So he's known for his work in fluid flow, transport, and reaction processes in porous media and fracture media, with applications to the recovery of subsurface fluids and soil remediation. So interesting field. I'm a fluid dynamics myself, but original training, so we can talk about porous medias. Those of you who know his activity, he leads the School of Engineering at the University of Southern California, a great operation. He leads research and educational agenda that has been very, very successful. Things that I would like to mention that are related to our meeting today, he articulated the concept of engineering plus. And we'll hear him talking about this, which I think speaks of engineering empowering all what we do. So we live in great times being an engineer, and as we all tell our students and colleagues. And I think Yanis have been a promoter of a lot of concepts that relate to that. Those of you that participate in the Grand Challenge Scholars Program of the National Academy of Engineering. Yanis was a co-founder, and he's been very active. It's focused in educating engineering students in research, interdisciplinary activities, innovation, and entrepreneurship with social consciousness and cultural awareness, which has been a topic of our discussion today. The program has been adopted by many institutions. Some of the deans that are here have been championing that as well. He has received many honors for research and education. He's a member of the National Academy of Engineering, and he's an associate member of the Academy of Athens. Again, the Greeks are a little tougher. They're not giving him full membership yet. You'll soon. So he has served in the executive committee of the Engineering Dean's Council of the American Society of Engineering Education. He has served as an executive committee here on the Global Engineering Dean's Council. And he serves in the diversity chair, as a diversity chair of the Engineering Dean's Council. And he has done an incredible work fostering diversity and inclusion in engineering. And we'll be talking a little bit about that also later today. So he has led very impactful initiatives in diversity, and for all this work that he's been doing in education, integration, and research, the Viterbi School of Engineering just received the American Society of Engineering Education President's Award that it was just received a couple days ago. So he flew. From Columbus here, so that's a great accomplishment, so congratulations, Yanis. And the last thing that I would like to mention that is very relevant to our gathering here in Fontainebleau is he's been the PI of the NSF I-Corps Innovation Node in Los Angeles, which is one of 7 national innovation nodes supported by the National Science Foundation, which is focused in encouraging innovation and entrepreneurship in engineering schools. So as you see, a perfect speaker for our dinner today. So, Yanis.
Well, thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank the organizers who invited me here. One trivia point that some of you may know is that Peter, who is the chair of GEDC, I was his TA at Caltech. So, and you know, when you're a TA, usually the way you grade your homeworks is you look at the homeworks of the best people, and then you go there, and then you copy, and then that's how you grade the homeworks of the other people. And so I was using Peter's homeworks in order to grade the other people's homeworks to make sure that they were right. So it was, we go way back, and good times back then. I think we are I was looking at the menu, and I think we are the appetizer to your dinner, because it says there that we're before that. So hopefully you will find us appetizing enough, but please drink as much as you can in order to be able to go through this presentation. We are not drinking, we simply have water here. So I want to spend a few minutes to give you some sort of a presentation here, if I may. And when I practiced this particular room on Tuesday, they told me how wonderful it is for me to see outside this area there. In which case, I decided that I should return the compliment and allow you to see a nice, different type of viewpoint, which is from Santa Catalina Island. This is an island which is off the coast of California. It's about an hour by boat from Los Angeles. You should visit it when you're there. It's a wonderful, the closest thing to a Greek island for me. So whenever I feel like, you know, I need to have something about a Greek island, I just go there, and you can understand why. So this is my sort of a refuge if I wanted to be quiet and peaceful. I have a definition for technology that I've been using for a long time now, maybe for the last 8 years or 9 years, and I borrowed it from Brian Arthur, who is one of these technologists. And for me, when I talk about technology, I use the definition exploiting a phenomenon for useful purposes. This is not, I don't talk about mathematics, I don't talk about physics, I don't talk about chemistry. I say what we do is exploit phenomena for useful purposes, or leverage phenomena for useful purposes. And this phenomena can be physical, can be chemical, geological, Total would be interested in the geological part, biological, and more important, social and behavioral. I think engineers and computer scientists are going more and more in this area, and I think we will be called to play a bigger role as the technology increases in the future. And so in this increasing degree of complexity, although physicists will tell you that there is nothing else other than physics, but nonetheless, you go down the list, and I think this is, when I explain engineering to prospective students and others, this is the definition I use. And we try to create an educational paradigm that addresses these issues as well as the research part as well. What is happening to the world today, obviously, and this is something that we have been discussing for some time, is that technology increases exponentially fast. So if you look at the curve of the technology curve as a function of time, it's a curve that's not linear anymore. However, we are conditioned to think linearly. And society is conditioned to think linearly, if you like, along the tangent of technology. But when you have this thinking in which is a linear thinking, if you want, versus the fact that the technology is growing exponentially fast, then there's a gap, and this gap keeps increasing. I believe that this gap explains the recent elections. I think it explains Brexit, and I think it explains also what happened in the United States. There is a gap here, and the only way to, there is a disconnect between people that can hug the exponential, and I submit that many of us hug the exponential, you know, in universities and companies, and then there is a part of the society that is being left behind, and this is the part that has this straight line that increases this particular dichotomy. And so, of course, the question is, how do you bridge that? And one way to do this is by making a disruption and go up to catch the exponential and then move from there, or go back in time, which obviously is not going to happen because time is an irreversible arrow, as you know. The arrow of time never goes back. And so I think that from that perspective, we have to, it teaches us a little bit of an example of what is the dichotomy that happens and what we need to do in order to improve it. And so there is this disruption that we see in front of us because the characteristic time of change in an exponential becomes continuously smaller and smaller. If you, as an engineer, if you take the derivative of an exponential and you take the inverse of that, then this decreases with time. Whereas the straight lines have a characteristic time which is very flat, if you like. In many ways, this explains what it is, the popularity of the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. I would guess, I would posit that the fixed mindset is the mindset of the linear mindset in which things happen slowly and there is a characteristic time that doesn't change very much. And I think the growth mindset is associated with a technology that is moving exponentially fast, and we have to keep adapting all the time and making sure that we are getting in this, facing this thing here. Many times I'm asked, what do you do as a dean? So I said I spend 100% of my time in 4 different dimensions. One is talent. These are people, faculty, staff, and creating a culture for them to be successful. The second thing we do is value, continuously adding value to your programs. What we discuss in this event this week is exactly about how do you add value to your programs. And this has to be continuous value to your curriculum. These are programs. The third thing we do is we try to create thought leadership. This is the research part in research university. This I call papers, where students, faculty present papers and provide thought leadership. And the fourth part is translation and impact, which is patents. So think of these 4 words: people, programs, papers, and patents. That is really what we do in most research universities. And the question is how we can then keep adjusting all these activities in order to be able to hug, as I call it, hug the exponential and be able to move forward in this new world. And that's 100% of your time. The other 100% of your time, you're using it to do fundraising, and you do budgets and make sure that your operation works well. So these are two different 100 things that you do. I would like now to talk about convergence, because convergence is something that we see happening very, very much. And I have this sort of try to explain this in what I call engineering plus X. Now, this plus X is known in many places. Stanford, they call it computer science plus X. I generalize this a little bit. I call it engineering plus X. And X is anything. And so when I talk to students and parents and constituents, I tell them that it is actually true. We do engineering enables every discipline, every X. X can be media, medicine, entertainment, biology, education, you name it. We are playing a more and more important role, and that's why it is so much more important that this type of event that we had today creates the specific curricula that addresses this particular enabling part. I have 3 pathways on how engineering and X work, and I call it E to X. 2 is like a cute way to say towards to. Okay, so I use 2. X to E, from X to engineering, and I use another definition, E union X, where E and X are together. And I will take you a little bit quickly through that. E to X, this is the most common things that happens because engineering empowers X. This is the disruption. These are the digital technologies. This is where you bring to the fore a lot of information technology, computer science, analytics, machine learning, whatever you call it. And engineering, in this case, makes X smarter, more efficient, open new dimensions, many that are disrupted, and these are the essentially digital technologies. One question that has to be addressed here is, what if X is societal or human-centric. And that's the part where we need to answer many interesting questions if X is societal or human-centric. The second part is X empowering E. The question is, can X empower engineering? And the answer to this question is absolutely yes. We can call it X-mimetic. For example, biomimetic. The way we try to understand how the brain works, many times we use, create machines that work like the brain. The brain is a phenomenal organ, tremendous computational power at very low actual power. And so I think in many cases, X can inform E, and I look at this as the nature's optimization over evolution. Again, the question is, what if X is societal or human-centric? Can an emotion inform engineering? Can things of this type, judgment, value, and so on and so forth, inform engineering? And that is part of the ethical stuff that we discussed earlier today, but other things as well. And the third part of convergence is where engineering and X commingle, and I call E union X. That's actually the most common place where these things happen, where both sides, both engineering and X, get together. It's like a double helix. One informs the other and doesn't have one dominant role, and then helps move the other in the other direction. This is most like the classical case of this, for example, is in biotechnology, where biotechnology informs engineering, biology informs engineering, which then informs biology, and then you move along that helix, or nanotechnology, but also cognitive and social sciences. And this typically rise to exponential technologies, that is technologies that can give you a lot faster rate and a lot faster growth. So these things I think are reasonably acceptable, I believe. But what I find to be more interesting is what happens with emotions, judgment, character, ethics, and morals. And the question is, what if X, the way engineering plus X get together, is human or society-centric? This will happen for sure in drones. Can you make decision-making that is autonomous, and it is moral, and it is ethical? Can drones have this ability? We are not too far from the point where these questions are being asked more and more significantly. The collision of society, humanity, and machines, in the sense of which is around the corner, it's happening more and more often, will have to address this question: how character, judgment, morality intersect with technology. And that's something I think that it is a very important question, and we will have to answer this more and more. A specific example is, for instance, something that we do on ethical decision making is, or how you use AI for social good. We started a center at USC in which you use artificial intelligence to inform the solution of social problems, for instance, homelessness, HIV spreading among homeless youth, things of the type that have a very significant societal impact. And that is something that I think we will see more and more, and many of our students are much more interested in how you use technologies to improve society, and I think this is part of the challenge that we have. So I will close this part by focusing one more time on this definition. And I will then focus on the question of what is useful purposes. Useful is on the eye of the beholder. Technology is intrinsically amoral. There is no morality about technology. However, when you develop something for useful purposes, what is useful for someone is not necessarily useful for another. You see this very clearly today in social media, Facebook, you name it. And this is the place where you have unintended consequences, where you have ethical and moral questions, there's complexity and policy issues. How do you address that? And decision-making, I think was discussed earlier today about ethical leadership. It's something that we do have to teach our students how to do better, because technology is increasingly powerful, and therefore decisions that are made have an increasingly powerful impact. And I think this is something that we have to deal with sooner or later with our students, and making sure that our students understand the impact that they have in technology. So our students are smart, they're capable, they are very able to enable all these other disciplines. At the same time, they have to understand the impact and the unintended consequences that come along from this type of definition. Another picture for you. This is from the island of Rhodes, where I grew up. This is the Knights Castle. Any of you have been there? The Knights, after they went trying to go back to their home countries, decided to stay in the island for like a few days, and they stayed for 300 years. And then they built all these wonderful things, you know, because the island is beautiful, and so they decided to stay there. So those of you who have not been there, you're welcome to visit. I'll host you when I'm there. I will close by talking a little bit about the Grand Challenges Scholars Program that was conceived in 2009 with, between Duke University, USC, and Olin. Has been adopted by more than 40 schools nationwide. Now it is endorsed and supported by the National Academy of Engineering. The president of the academy considers this to be an important part of his legacy, so he's considering that. But this program has all the things that we were describing today during this meeting. It has a research and creativity component. It has an understanding gained through interdisciplinarity. It has an understanding gained through experience that viable business models are necessary, a cultural competence, whether it is global or local, and a social consciousness, whether this is service learning or other type of outreach. This is a program that is extracurricular, but it is wonderfully endorsed and subscribed by many students, that they love this type of programs because they are exposed to this new mindset that captures all these ideas there. And so I wanted to give a plug for this program. We believe that it will be sort of the engineering curriculum of the future, in the sense that it is consistent with the World Economic Forum report on the skills that are needed for the 21st century, such as creativity, leadership, perseverance, grit, things that are kind of cannot be documented or taught at the curriculum itself. And those of you who are not aware of the 9 Grand Challenges, there are 14 of them. Essentially, they capture a bucket of sustainability, a bucket of health, a bucket of security, and a bucket of joy of life. Was announced in 2008. Chuck Vest, the then president of the Academy, former president of MIT, now the late Chuck Vest, because he passed away 4 years ago, a huge advocate of this, a wonderful mentor, leader, and we owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude for moving this forward. And so this is all I wanted to say. I will close with another picture from the Rhode Island, the island of Rhodes. This is the Knights Castle there as well. So I grew up surrounded by history. And so, you know, many Greeks are surrounded by history, and therefore I just wanted to show this to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanis. Thank you for a very good, provocative presentation. So we have time for a couple questions. So what we heard is that engineering rules.
Yes.
We are in,
unapologetic.
So as you refer to the World Economic Forum, it's established that we are in the 4th industrial revolution, with engineering having a very, very important role. And we heard today some of Janice, the way he looks at the role that engineering has in convergence. We really, today, to advance, we need to combine all the disciplines, and engineering has a big role on that. So my question is, as we are in that era of convergence, and there are these fast changes that we are seeing, so we build programs to educate the students, to be ready, to be agile, and questions that we have is, are we being fully inclusive? Mm-hmm. What are the issues related with diversity as we move into these areas? Are we going to these big, fast changes? We are trying to change the mindset And then we enter these arguments about old mindset, new mindsets. We talk about growth mindset, fixed. So can you tell us a little bit more about those, and what are we doing to make sure that as we move into new mindset through all the programs that you and many other institutions are putting together, how are we really impacting? How well are we doing? And how inclusive we are to maintain the diversity that is needed?
So this growth and fixed mindsets, of course, are more recent ways of describing this, or more recent terminology. However, it is not very difficult to associate a fixed mindset with the fact that of stereotypes, and stereotypes that people are sort of, it's almost like nature versus nurture. It's like people sort of are born this way, and that's the way it is. And if you are not accepting this, then too bad for you. Whereas the growth mindset is a very different one, and allows people, in essence, to grow. People to be exposed to things that, and also fail if they're not successful at the beginning, but be able therefore to have issues such as, develop traits such as perseverance and grit and innovation, and the ability to pursue things that will allow them to, through passion, through many other things that are sort of a soft, that we cannot put in a hard way in a curriculum. But certainly this is something that I think characterizes and can explain perhaps what you see. I think this exponential change will also bring a growth mindset, will also bring into it a larger number of the population that currently is underrepresented in engineering, female, underrepresented in the United States, a very much minority populations, African American, Hispanic, that have to be much more inclusive. The way I see it is that so there are three imperatives, if you like, from diversity from my perspective. And I'm looking at the United States perspective. One imperative is simply economic necessity. In other words, you need to have more talent in your economy, in engineering, which is the dominant discipline of our times, and this talent has to be there to contribute. The second is diversity of ideas. There's a wonderful book that I recommend by David Deutsch, which is a quantum physicist at Oxford University, called The Beginning of Infinity. He talks about how is knowledge created. And the way knowledge is created, according to Deutsch, is that it's very much a Darwinian process. Darwinian process means that you try all different kinds of things, and the best idea sort of survives and becomes knowledge. The more of these experiments you do, the more such ideas you generate in different places, the more diverse the set of ideas, the more likely to have new knowledge that is better knowledge. So this is something that you miss if you are stereotypical in the way you accept people into engineering. And the third part is obviously a social justice component that has been in the United States for quite a while. And then that's an important component to have. It is, however, a component that sometimes has been used by people to ascribe political sort of tendencies, and it is probably best to stay out of this conversation and simply emphasize these other two conversations. When I look at diversity in an engineering program, I think what we have not done well is, as engineers, we know how to solve problems. There is no problem that we cannot solve, okay? So let's accept that. I don't believe that we have decided as a discipline, as faculty, as organizations, to really try to solve this problem in earnest. And let me give you a specific example of how I look at that. I believe that the output from, let's say, an undergraduate curriculum should be demographically invariant. It means that whatever demographics come in should be reflected in the demographics that come out. In graduation rates, in, let's say, any other things, retention, and so on and so forth. There is no reason for that. If you find, and you do find, that this is not the case, then this means that as an institution, you have failed to address the needs of the people that are coming into the program. So if every dean and every organization makes a decision and take its accountability and leadership to say that my output is going to be demographically invariant compared to the input, you're going to solve this problem in 0 time, because every university will be able then to produce an output that is similar to the input. And if you keep doing this at every level, going back to K through 12, I think you're going to solve this problem. So to me, this is an issue of commitment, an issue of leadership, and an issue of accountability. And the moment you do this, I think you could change dramatically what we do. On the other hand, I think that by changing the conversation about engineering, which is presenting engineering as solving problems with societal impact, is very important. When I talk to parents and students about the grand challenges, they don't look at engineering as solving, being there and you will be in a cubicle and do coding. That's one thing that you do, but that's not the only thing. They see that there is a societal impact of the things that you do. That tremendously excites, for example, women and minorities. At USC last year, we had 40%, the freshman class was 40% women. Now, USC, of course, is a private institution, so we can selectively recruit, and a state school may not have this ability. However, the impact, this changing of the conversation, I think is real, and by positioning engineering the right way, I think we can make a tremendous conversion all the way from K through 12 to K through 20, or now they call it P through 20. So it's pre-K all the way to 20.
So as we see the change in mindset, being more in the growth mode, and the fact that there is more and more momentum, and we see more and more institutions embracing that. We still see that there are some limitations. Can you comment on what do you see? Are the limitations more related to government, geographical, the environmental, the educational environment? I mean, what do you
limitations?
Limitations in having the mind, more accelerated changes in the mindset, right. Because there is a lot of efforts ongoing, sure. But we still don't see it.
Well, in many ways, universities, are institutions like the church, and they change at very slow rates. I don't think the church changes very fast. Well, it depends on what churches you're going to. So I don't want to offend anyone here. I'm a Greek Orthodox, so I've seen it. I was an altar boy, so I know exactly how it's going on in there. There is a cultural there is an inertia. However, with respect to change. However, I think you can have change agents that you can recruit within a university, and I believe that the critical concentration of people that can champion something to change is about 10%. This is the way I understand that. So you're not talking about 50%. 10% of distributed agents of change, if you like, can have an impact. That therefore, this is how you want to cultivate. We understand that universities are driven by the faculty, and certainly we need to make sure that the faculty own this. However, you have to help create a change of culture. I have a tremendous amount of faith in young faculty. You see them when you recruit them, they are phenomenal, they want to change things, they are very different, and then, so these changes will happen. It will take a while, but I was talking with you earlier today. I suggest as a test for everyone is to do a 23andMe. If you do a 23andMe, you will see what is your origin. I tell you that if everyone in the United States does a 23andMe test, they will find out that their views on diversity will change 100%, because they will find out that you are not what you think you are, that you have an origin that's actually much more diverse than the rest. So this is my proposal. Everyone should do a 23andMe test.
Yeah, so I think that if we are able to get where we believe the change in the mindset driven by technology, driven by the changes that we see, I think integration and diversity, it will be just coming along, just following suit, because it is all related into how we integrate. So I think thank you for those comments. I have one more question we've been talking for the last day and a half here. We've been discussing the exponential changes with technology, how we keep up with those, how we can need to prepare our students to be more agile, to give them the educational environment. and to adapt. And so I was asking you the question earlier today, and we didn't get to fully discuss it, is how are we doing as we develop the programs, as agile as we should be, to be responding to the changes? What are our tools and mechanisms as we are trying, and we were discussing earlier today in a different conversation that we heard this morning about the difficulties in these changes happening fast enough. So do you have, what are your views?
Well, universities are people's organizations, right? So, and the people that make the changes are, for the most part, the faculty, because the faculty dictate the university, are the essence of the university. So you have to make sure you convert faculty to believe in a change, that it is the appropriate, in the appropriate direction. One thing that I have found useful is by creating entities like an engineering education, let's say, not department. Some universities like Purdue and Virginia Tech do have a Department of Engineering Education, but you can create in results a quasi-department where people understand all these other aspects that we don't typically deal with when, you know, in a research university, faculty are very much interested in, you know, the next best thing in machine learning or big data or, you know, nanomaterials and the like. But you need to also have a strong voice heard from the faculty in the area of engineering education, because engineering education changes equally fast with everything else and should change equally fast with everything else. So to me, creating such an organization is very useful for people that are committed to actually look at the big picture and try to recruit and implement change. I think if you do that, you will find that you have a significant help and allies in making changes of this type.
And using the technology, perhaps to design system that can be adjustable and change in some real time. So thank you. I think, you know, for the conversation, I think we would like to open for a couple questions from the audience. I know that, you know, dinner is about to be served. So any questions for Yanis on...
There's a question.
Thank you for the presentation. That didn't look like roads at all, but, but we're all going to take you up on your offer to have us visit. My question was about the Grand Challenge Scholar Program and diffusing that internationally.
Yep.
What are some of the barriers that you see as we try to adapt it, adopt it, accept it outside of the United States?
Right. So there is an unfortunate, let's say, which is not an important thing, regarding why 14 grand challenges. Okay. So people will say, why not 12 or 20? And so I tell people that actually 14 is an integer number, but you can have rational numbers like 1.3. And if you want to go to irrational, you can have square root of 2. You know, so there are many grand challenges from 1 to 14 you can put in there. And so don't get too tied up with access to clean water as the only thing that you need to do. You can do other things like removing Peter, give me a bad chemical compound from you know, a substance. So that's you know, something could be part of the grand challenge. So for example, when we try to do this with India, the response we got from India is that the grand challenges in India are different, and they articulated 4 different grand challenges. I mean, an additional different. It's irrelevant because there are 4 buckets. Look at this in terms of buckets. One bucket is sustainability. The second bucket is security. The third bucket is health. And the fourth bucket is joy of life. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a well-accepted thing, and you apply it to society or the planet or the rest of us. So if you look at it from this perspective, the world is wonderful, but for some reason the rhetoric that we have used has been our worst enemy. So I always talk to them, don't look at the 14, look at the entire spectrum between 1 and 14, and you'll be happy. And we actually are trying to do this with many institutions overseas as well. The National Academy just hired a person committed to do exactly that, Professor Rama. He used to be at ASU. And his goal and his charge is actually to expand the program. So hopefully we'll be able to do that.
I think think we have one more question from the audience. I know it's you're getting tired. Hans?
Yeah, Hans.
Thank you very much. I was very much intrigued at your beginning comments about Brexit and the changing political contexts. Obviously a very sensitive, complex subject. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay, can you turn the cameras off and everything? I don't want my president to be unhappy with me or the board of trustees. To me, I mean, you know, automation is something that has always been an issue with respect to jobs, right, and work. What happens is that right now we have a lot faster. And so the faster we accept this reality and deal with it, the better off we will be as societies. I think it's as simple as that. I don't think this is anything more complicated than that. The world is global, and you know, we'll communicate globally. There is an internet that's, if you start cutting access to the internet, or if you start not pushing globalization, then you have to do things like cutting the internet, communications. I think it is counterproductive and unnatural in some sense. I think we have to solve problems in a different way. And I believe that as universities, we have not done a good job in making sure we understand. So the cultural awareness issue that I was discussing there, you know, for a long time, many universities says, how do you globalize? How do you go and visit, you know, Uganda, or you go to Honduras H2O, Engineers Without Borders? But there were significant problems in our own backyard that we ignored. And I think that is something, a reorientation that people have to start thinking that way, because you know, there is non-uniform cultural distribution within a country like the United States itself, or many other countries. And I think that is something that we have failed as institutions to properly account for. And I think that's something we need to do more about.
Can we have an engineering solution for it?
That's right.
Yes, I think this last issue that you raised is a really important one, and that's the issue of inequality.
Yep.
You know, and one of the great fears of exponential growth in technology is that contributing to the inequality gap.
Yes.
And I wonder, you've given so many wonderful thoughts today. I wonder if you could comment on
Sure.
what your thinking is about how we deal with inequality.
Well, so there is a technological dividend that comes from the exponential technology, right? I mean, robots can do remarkable things. You know, they replace the dirty, boring, dirty, and what was that? Dull, and what's the other one? Dangerous. Okay, so you avoid all these. I mean, the marvels of technology are amazing, unbelievable. You would never thought that you can grab information out of the air. That's what we do. We just grab information out of the air. So the question is, to me, is more a question of the values of our society. How do you distribute the dividend that comes from technology? And to me, this is an entirely values question. It has nothing else to do than that. Technology will keep going. Is good. It gives you all these very wonderful things. The question is, who benefits from the associated dividends that comes from that? And to me, this is an entirely question of values, and every society has to figure out how to deal with this question. To me, this is not an issue of technology. It's an issue of what we value our society. It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Luis.
Kalispera Ralgio Yanis, o Rhodos, Nai, o Morphos. Leonardo da Vinci was hired by the Duke of Milan for his technical skills to create weapons. Technology has been pulled by the armament. Do you see a shift? It still is. A lot of it is pulled by, you know, machines of war. Is there a shift in based on what you just said?
So that is true to some degree. Although, you know, if you look at startups, companies like Google, others, I don't think they create or they're driven by machines that benefit defense. On the other hand, a significant number of research that is sponsored in American universities is very much defense-driven. And so that will continue, I think. You know, it's a part of the way, you know, this has been going on for a while. It's a hard question to answer. On the positive side, a lot of civilian applications have come from military sort of initial technologies, so this dual type of use. Human nature doesn't change very much. So technology is moving exponentially fast. I think human nature is pretty flat in some sense. So I think that we will always have this dichotomy in there. On the other hand, on a positive side, I will give you a good example. At USC, we have a School of Social Work. And we decided some time ago to have a joint faculty meeting between the two schools to see if there were any overlaps. And so I talked about the grand challenges. And I said, what are your grand challenges? You know, I tell the social work people, and everybody says, well, I don't know. So they were asking themselves, you know, what's the grand challenges? And the dean of the School of Social Work took it seriously and recruited other deans of social work. And lo and behold, last year, they articulated 12 grand challenges for social work. And they invited me at Washington at the unveiling because they thought that I was kind of a, you know, an instigator, although I was not anyway. But it was great because for a change, the audience was not all men. They were mostly women because social work, you know, it's very much more diverse than engineering type of conferences. But let me tell you what are their challenges. Reduce inequality, smart decarceration, eliminate homelessness, things that are wicked problems of the highest degree. However, I believe that because of the fact that we have this tremendous analytical and computational capacity now in our hands, we can make progress that we have not made before. And I think that is where this synergy can come in and create a tremendous benefit for society.
Thank you very much, Yanis. I think we're out of time, so we'll continue the conversation within